Her parents weren't the only ones being mean to me. Her siblings joined. 1 week after I was almost kidnapped, I was stopped in the streets by her siblings and their college friends. They took me to a quiet place and rained every vile racist word they could think of on me. They also made me dance like a monkey while throwing apples at me. To add salt to the injury, they made videos of me dancing. I kept quiet about it and returned home heartbroken. 2 days later, I was in my house when 2 men suddenly burst in and began beating me up until I was almost unconscious before they left. Almost immediately, a call came in from Anna's father. However, it was his wife who spoke to me. Hi, my name is Vincent, and I'm a Ugandan. I grew up in the States with my family members, and we're all dark-skinned. I faced racism while growing up, but I never expected I'd also face it in marriage. Anna is a white girl I met in my final year of college. The first day we spoke was when she comforted me after my college friends refused me to eat with them any longer because they didn't like how they were often mocked by others for having a black friend. It was quite a shameful scene as they practically yelled at me. I stood in shock for over a minute before I finally got the courage to walk out. While I was sitting and being sad, alone in the library, Anna came up to me. Prior, we'd never spoken, so I'd thought she had come to mock me. However, I was surprised when she handed me a handkerchief.
Dry your tears.
I didn't know I was crying until she did that. Without a word, she sat beside me and began patting my back gently, assuring me that not all white were like that, and I shouldn't listen to what my friends said. Although I'd lost my friends, I found a better friend in Anna. From then, we were always together. She disregarded every side comment about our friendship. I'm truly grateful for her. After college graduation was when we confessed our feelings for each other. We dated for 2 years before I proposed to her. Anna's excitement was unmeasurable. She was so excited about the proposal, making me feel incredibly special. When I took her to my parents, they were very welcoming toward her. But I could feel their concerns, no matter how hard they tried to hide it. Luckily, both asked to speak to me in private, right at the same time I wanted to ask them.
Are you sure, Vincent? She's a white girl. You know how these whites are. Are you sure you want this?
Son, if you aren't comfortable with her, remember, it's better to end it than marry her and be forced to put up with her attitude. Mom, Dad, you're getting the wrong impression of Anna. She's a good lady, and she isn't like the others. They seemed quite comfortable after that. It seemed as though they both just needed to be sure I was happy getting married to Anna. 3 days later, it was time to meet her parents. I put on my best clothes and even rented a car so I could give them a great impression. We arrived at her parents' home, and the first thing her mom did was burst into laughter when she came to receive us. I thought she was simply excited to see her daughter until she turned and walked away after yelling, "Anna brought an ape with her!" Was I offended? Greatly. How could she call me that? I would leave, but Anna pleaded that I went in with her and she would go have a talk with her mom. I agreed and followed her. 2 ladies and a young man were in the living room, alongside her mother and an elderly man who I supposed was her dad. When he spoke, I realized I was right. He was her dad. "What is this, Anna? Why are you being this way? How could you embarrass your father this much by bringing an ape with you?" Before I could speak, Anna did.
He's not an ape, Dad. How could you be so heartless and say that to him? He's human too, okay? I'm sure you aren't blind and can see that clearly.
Are you crazy, Anna? How dare you talk back to your father because of this black man?
Oh, you recognize his gender now? Well, guess what? I'm getting married to this black man who you both call an ape.
What?
Yes, he proposed to me, and I'm marrying him. He takes care of me so much and does everything within his power to make me happy. How could you make him feel so bad about himself just because he's black, huh?
All the while, I remained rooted to my spot, my eyes glued to the floor. I was proud of Anna for standing up for me, but I also felt bad that she had to fight with her family over me.
To be honest with you, Anna, it's weird that you're marrying a black man. I mean, why on earth should that even happen?
Because we're both humans. I'm not going to force you all to accept it, but know whose loss it's going to be when people get to know that none of you attended my wedding. I'll be away, having fun with my husband, while you all would be here, facing the side talks.
And with that, she grabbed my hand and stormed out of her parents' house. She apologized to me after we got home. Although I felt very bad, I assured her that I was fine, and she didn't have to worry. When she left, I called my mom to discuss what happened.
I told you, Vincent, it's hard marrying a white woman as a black man. My heart is bleeding from hearing how you were treated. They owe you an apology.
My mother comforted me, and I was able to sleep that night. 2 days later, I was at work when my phone suddenly started ringing. I checked who the caller was, but it was an unknown number. I answered the call anyway, as I thought it could be an important one. To my surprise, it was Anna's father.
Is this Vincent? I'm Anna's father.
I could feel my heart nearly exploding. What was he calling me for? How did he get my number? I was too shocked to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot for a moment that apes aren't trained to speak.
I could hear his wife's laughter in the background. I instantly knew why they called. It was simply to mock me even more. But I was wrong. I was threatened.
I'm warning you, black man. Stay away from my daughter. I don't want you staining her skin with yours.
You heard him. Stay away, blackhead.
I'm quite a ruthless man. You're going to be in a whole lot of trouble if you don't listen to me and end whatever you have with my daughter.
I couldn't work properly after that call. My mind was unsettled. The man sounded serious when he threatened that I was going to be in trouble if I didn't let Anna be. After work, I went to the company Anna worked to pick her up, and there, I told her about what had transpired. She was furious and headed straight to her parents' house that night, no matter how I tried to stop her. That didn't settle things. The more she fought with them, the more I suffered. Nearly on a daily basis, I received calls from her parents or siblings warning me to end things with her, or I was going to face huge problems. Eventually, they began bringing their threats to life. Firstly, I was fired from my workplace for no reason.
I'm sorry, Vincent, but you must leave.
The next day, Anna's dad called me. He revealed that he'd discovered he was the biggest shareholder in the company where I worked, and had threatened to bring my boss down if he didn't fire me. The man had no choice but to do so. I was tempted to tell Anna about it, but it would only get her even more pissed. Somehow she got to know about it. Not only was she angry at me for not telling her, she was extremely furious with her father and went to fight him. I tried to explain that the more she did that, the more danger she was putting me into. But she wasn't ready to listen and was blinded by her anger. After another fight with her father, I was almost kidnapped. I was only lucky that the police were around the area, so they weren't lucky enough to get me. Anna's father called me to boast about it and told me he was going to do something even worse than the attempted kidnapping. Her parents weren't the only ones being mean to me. Her siblings joined. 1 week after I was almost kidnapped, I was stopped in the streets by her siblings and their college friends. They took me to a quiet place and rained every vile racist word they could think of on me. They also made me dance like a monkey while throwing apples at me. To add salt to the injury, they made videos of me dancing. I kept quiet about it and returned home heartbroken. 2 days later, I was in my house when 2 men suddenly burst in and began beating me up until I was almost unconscious before they left. Almost immediately, a call came in from Anna's father. However, it was his wife who spoke to me.
How does it feel? That was simply a warning, Blackhead. The next time, we're gonna make sure they leave you dead. Leave our daughter alone and go get yourself a woman with a dirty skin like yours.
I kept quiet about it. When Anna came over to check on me, I warned her to not go to her parents. This time, she agreed, finally understanding the danger she always put me in whenever she did. She ensured I was treated properly, and afterward, we both went to report at the station. After reporting them, they were invited to the station. We thought they'd be arrested, but I ended up being the one who got arrested.
How dare you try to marry a white woman? You'll know your place after spending months in jail. These apes can be hilarious.
I was taken into the cell where Anna's parents ensured I was severely tortured. Eventually, after 2 weeks, Anna was able to bail me out. However, I wasn't ready to give up. I contacted a great lawyer Anna recommended and filed a case against her parents. Luckily, he was against racism, even though he was white. What her parents didn't know was that I had recordings of every conversation we had over the phone. Those and the pictures of my wounds after the men beat me up were enough to file a case. We got the cops involved, but not the same as the previous ones. The universe was on my side.
they were also against racism. I was able to bring them to court alongside the police officers, the men who beat me up, and the ones who tried to kidnap me. The officers had managed to find them, and they'd confessed to being sent by Anna's parents. With the evidences presented, they were all found guilty. Her parents, racism, attempted murder, attempted kidnapping, psychological and physical abuse. The officers were guilty of not doing their jobs properly and arresting an innocent citizen wrongly. The other guys were charged for attempted kidnapping and attempted murder. Anna's parents got 30 years imprisonment each. The officers were removed from office and give 5 years each. The guys who tried to kidnap me were given 20 years each, as it was revealed that they were actively involved in kidnapping and human trafficking. The guys who beat me up had 10 years too, as they were also discovered to be involved in a whole lot of other crimes. Anna and I left the court satisfied. As for her siblings, Anna abandoned them to take care of themselves all alone after we made them delete the videos they took of me. We also made sure their friends did the same. They were still teenagers, but also racist. So we refused to forgive them. With the support from my parents and our friends, we went on to have our wedding and enjoyed it. Her siblings came to the church to ask forgiveness, just before Anna arrived, but I chased them off and warned them to never show their face to us again, or they'd have to face our wrath. That was the last time they showed their faces to us. It's been 5 years now, and Anna and I have had 2 children. One who's dark-skinned and another who's light-skinned. We've vowed to protect them from racists. Oh, by the way, her siblings now live in a smaller house which wasn't easy to even rent because everyone knew them in the town as racist and didn't want to rent them a house, and their new landlord is a black man. I wonder how they feel. We heard their car tires are constantly slashed by people who hate them in the neighborhood. They couldn't finish college and also sold off their parents' mansion to feed themselves. 2 are working part-time jobs in different restaurants, and the third is still jobless. Do we care? Of course not. You can't do this to me, Linda.
Why not? I can't be with a sick man. You can die for all I care.
Liz, sweetheart, can you speak to your mother? She doesn't mean all that, does she?
Of course she does.
What? You're not taking her side right now, are you?
Well, I am. I also can't stay with a poor father. I'm leaving with my mother. Rest in peace if you die.
Hello. I'm Harold, and I'm 48 years of age. I married my ex-wife, Linda, 20 years ago. My parents didn't support our marriage, especially my mother, but I was strong-headed about it. I loved her, and I wanted to marry her. My parents' reasons sounded absurd to me then.
She's only marrying you for your money, son. Girls like her don't ever marry for love.
I'm afraid your mother is right, Harold. She appears to be a greedy lady. You might want to rethink your decision. She also doesn't work. How will she support you? I refused adamantly and married my ex-wife. For the first 2 years, Linda refused to birth a child. According to her, she wanted us to enjoy being a married couple for as long as possible. I reasoned with her and thought she was right. We spent those years having all the fun we could get. The next year, she got pregnant with our daughter. When Liz was born, I thought she was the most beautiful girl in the world. I'd never seen any child with such beauty. I was happy to finally have a complete family of my own. Linda didn't work. I did suggest getting her a job, but she refused. According to her, I was rich, and it would be embarrassing for her to work instead of being the missus of the house. Again, I reasoned with her. While I worked hard to maintain my wealth for my family, my wife took care of our daughter. I provided the best things for my family and made sure they both lacked nothing. However, tragedy struck our family 2 months after Liz's 17th birthday. I got diagnosed with cancer. It wasn't serious at first, but it slowly began to spread until I had to stop working to get treated. My ex-wife and daughter took care of me for a few weeks, but they soon got tired and stopped visiting regularly like they used to. I asked my ex-wife once when she came over, and her reply had me shocked.
Why should I be here every day? I can't take the risk of getting infected by your disease. Breathing the same air as you is risky enough.
But cancer isn't infectious. You can't get it by taking care of me.
Well, I'm being careful. I'm leaving now, matter of fact. Being close to you is dangerous.
At first, I thought it was as a result of her ignorance, so I asked the doctor to explain to her that it wasn't contagious as she thought. Luckily, she came by 2 days later with Liz, and the doctor was in the room at the time.
I was told you think cancer is dangerous. You don't have to be afraid, it isn't.
Well, do I care? Actually, it's not that. I just gave that as an excuse.
What? What do you mean?
I'm leaving you, Harold. I didn't sign up to take care of a sick man.
How can you say that, Linda? I'll be fine soon. Can't you have a little patience?
No, never. Not with a sick man. I'm going to bring our divorce papers to you in a week.
You can't do this to me, Linda.
Why not? I can't be with a sick man. You can die for all I care.
Liz, sweetheart, can you speak to your mother? She doesn't mean all that, does she?
Of course she does.
What? You're not taking her side right now, are you?
Well, I am. I also can't stay with a poor father. I'm leaving with my mother. Rest in peace if you die.
But I'm not poor.
You will be by the time you're done treating this. Goodbye, Father. Like I said earlier, I do wish you rest in peace when you die.
The doctor was shocked, but not as I was. How could she and our daughter turn their backs on me at the time I needed them the most? I was truly heartbroken. The doctor tried to console me, but I refused and asked him to give me some time alone. It was a whole lot to take in. The next day, Linda came with divorce papers and asked me to sign them. I tried calling them afterward, but neither of them were picking up the calls. I soon realized that they'd blocked my number from being able to call them. I was alone at the hospital. 1 week later, I was forced to call my personal assistant to request her help. Without arguing, she agreed. I offered to pay her, but she refused.
The company's suffering from your absence. That's enough for you. I can't make you pay me. I should have been here earlier, matter of fact. I just thought your family were here with you.
I was tempted to tell her what Linda and Liz did, but I held back. I didn't want to make them look bad. My personal assistant was very kind. She took care of me so well that most staff members at the hospital mistook her for my wife. During that period, we grew so close and became attached to each other. I hadn't heard any news about Linda and Liz yet, but I hoped to. Immediately, I left the hospital. For nearly 6 months, my personal assistant took no money from me for taking care of me. She also assisted in running my company. However, without me there, things got worse, and I was forced to sell the company. By the time I was out, the only thing I had left was my mansion. I was also told by my home staff that Linda and Liz had left the house 6 months ago. I realized it was after the last time I saw them that they left. Even more, I found out my wife has started living with the CEO of a rival company. Apparently, she'd helped him to drive my customers to his own company. I was devastated. It was the darkest time of my life. Fortunately, my personal assistant was always with me. She ensured I never turned to alcohol for consolation. Whenever she wasn't at my house, she made sure the maids watched over me and stopped me if I ever tried to drink. Soon, I got over the thought of my wife leaving me. I had no company anymore, and my bank account wasn't as it used to be. I knew I needed to start something before I went completely broke. But first, I went to see Linda. I heard about Liz's graduation ceremony, so I planned to meet them there. That decision brought me the biggest embarrassment of my life. No. Linda and Liz pulled me out of the hall once they sighted me. How could you do this to me, Linda? You not only took my customers to him, you also took my daughter?
Well, sick man, my daughter and I deserve a wealthy man who can take good care of us. That man used to be you, but it's him now. Get that into your freaking head.
Mom is right. He has filled your stop, and you can't do anything about it. We're going to have as much fun as we want without you.
In case you didn't understand what the girl said, she meant you shouldn't show your face to us anymore.
Before I could respond, one of the man's bodyguards approached us.
The boss asked me to see if you're both okay.
No, we're not. Can you get this poor man away from our sight?
Without wasting time, the man pushed me to the floor and yelled at me to leave. The people around immediately stopped and began to watch. Linda and Liz walked away after asking the bodyguard to deal with me if I tried to be stubborn. I did get beaten a little before I shamefully walked away. I reached home to meet my personal assistant waiting for me. She was shocked to see me in that state. Quickly, she swung into action. I was taken to the hospital and treated there. When we returned home, she revealed to me that she drafted out a plan to bring my company back to life. But I sold it already. She told about how she'd spoken to the man who bought it and discovered that he didn't need it. He was too rich and simply needed to spend some of his money. He was also willing to sell it back to me at an insanely low price. With the encouragement from my personal assistant, I took more than half of the money I had left in my bank account and bought my company back. Together with her, we began working hard to bring it back to life. It was a hard time for me, but she was right beside me, encouraging me to push on. In the process, we grew feelings for each other. I hadn't expected her to agree when I asked her to be my girlfriend, but she did. Even though I wasn't rich anymore and the company wasn't doing well yet, she didn't mind.
I love you, and I'm going to be here with you every step of the way, no matter what.
Together, we pushed harder until the company began coming back to life again. The customers Linda took to her boyfriend's company, my girlfriend brought them back to ours, slowly. Soon, we had employees again, and my company returned to the state it was before my illness. I decided to get married to my girlfriend. I proposed to her, and she agreed. The day I took her to my parents was the day I revealed everything that had happened, including my illness. They had no idea because they were living in a different country. My parents were furious as to how Linda and Liz treated me when I was sick and even divorced me, but I reminded them that it wasn't about those two anymore, but my girlfriend and I. Luckily, they liked her and approved of her. We got married 3 months later. However, on my wedding day, Linda and Liz suddenly appeared at the hotel where I was meant to stay before heading to the church. I had no idea how they knew I was there. They both went on their knees, pleading for my forgiveness in tears. According to Linda, the man had left her after my company came back to life, and he was broke to fund her lifestyle. He'd heard about my situation and had used her greediness to his advantage. They apologized and begged me to stop the marriage to my personal assistant, but I burst into laughter. Well, I'm sorry, but I've cut off ties with you both. I don't care if you used to be my wife or if you're my daughter, but I don't want to have anything to do with you both. I asked them to leave, but when they refused, I was forced to ask the bouncers to chase them out. Of course, he was rough with them, the same way their bodyguard was to me the day I'd gone to plead with them. My wedding went smoothly and happily. From the venue, we headed straight to Paris for our honeymoon. 2 days later, we got a call that 2 thieves who were trying to break into my house were caught by my bodyguards. They were both at the hospital after a terrible fall from my balcony while trying to escape. Their legs had been paralyzed forever. My wife and I had to end our honeymoon and returned home. To my surprise, it was Linda and Liz. Linda knew where I kept my money and the passcode of the safe. They'd wanted to steal from there since she didn't work and didn't have a man to fund her lifestyle. I didn't file a case. They were miserable, already being crippled. I asked the police to free them. However, I refused to pay for their hospital bills. They were sent out of the hospital, even though their wounds weren't fully healed because no one paid their bills. It's been 2 years, and my wife just had our first child, a boy. We're living happily without problems or news from Linda and Liz. They could both suffer till death for all I care. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below, saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment. The one that stood out the most was one time when my father wanted to own a car, and he decided that rather than buy one, that he would simply find one he liked and steal it. He went for a walk, and after about an hour, he found one that he liked and managed to break into it and drove away. However, a cop saw him and started to chase him. After a high-speed chase, my father lost the cop, and then he ditched the car and ran home. He was so angry when he got home that all of us avoided him for fear that we might get hit because he was so angry. Hi there, my name is Brad, and I may have done something rather cruel. Part of me feels a bit justified, but maybe you could give me your opinion. To start things off, you need to understand a bit of my childhood. Things weren't always easy between me and the rest of my family, although it wasn't because I was the black sheep of the family. Rather the opposite, actually. Everyone else was black sheep, and I was the only white one. By that I mean my family, well, they weren't exactly the most honest and good-hearted of people. Like, for example, my father had a regular grift where he would distract people while my sister would pick their pockets. If people would notice that they were being robbed, then my father would throw ashes in their face. He would literally keep handfuls of ash that he gathered from our fireplace in his pockets. Dad, you and Kendra really need to stop stealing from people. One of these days, someone is going to catch you, or you will rob someone who is a police officer, and you will get arrested.
Oh, you are such a stick in the mud. You must have been swapped at birth. There is no way any son of mine would be such a coward and say something so stupid. Your sister is the best pickpocket around.
Yeah, Brad, you are such a sissy. What is wrong with you?
It was always like that. They would do terrible things and then think that I was the odd one. When I was old enough, I got myself a job, and they called me a loser for working for minimum wage while they made good money selling drugs. Part of me was jealous about all the money they were making, but I also knew that they would eventually get caught. At least I assumed that they would, but somehow, they always managed to avoid being noticed by the police. There were a few very close calls, though. The one that stood out the most was one time when my father wanted to own a car, and he decided that rather than buy one, that he would simply find one he liked and steal it. He went for a walk, and after about an hour, he found one that he liked and managed to break into it and drove away. However, a cop saw him and started to chase him. After a high-speed chase, my father lost the cop, and then he ditched the car and ran home. He was so angry when he got home that all of us avoided him for fear that we might get hit because he was so angry. He would get like that sometimes. He wouldn't normally be abusive, but when he got frustrated or angry, he would lash out. The final straw came just before my 18th birthday. I had been saving up a lot of money from my part-time job, and I was planning on using it to buy a car. I would need it so that I could go to school while still working. I got lucky and got myself a scholarship so that I could go to school. It didn't pay for everything, but it did help a lot. However, the school that I was going to attend was further away than my house, and I would need a means of reliable transportation. While I slept, though, my sister snuck into my room and took my bank card, went down to the bank and drained my bank account, and then snuck my card back into my wallet without me even noticing. The next day, I tried to buy myself lunch, and my card got declined. I was so confused until I checked my bank account and saw that it was empty. My heart skipped a beat when I saw that it was completely empty. There had been over $13,000 in there, and I had no idea what had happened until I got home. My parents and sister were celebrating. As soon as I saw them with a pile of new clothes, a new TV, and various new appliances, I knew that they were responsible for my account being drained. What is all this stuff? Did you monsters steal my money?
Of course I did. You made all that money like a complete chump. Besides, we needed it more.
Besides, we are a family. Your money is our money. Plus, we've given you a house to live in and food to eat. It was the least you could do. Frankly, you should have been sharing it with us all this time.
I can't believe that you would do this to me. I needed that money. You had no right to take that from me.
Oh, just cry us a river.
I was so angry that I could barely see straight. However, I also knew that I wasn't going to get my money back from them. It was just a waste of time. The only thing I felt that I could do was leave and never look back. A few weeks later, I had found myself a very small one-room apartment. Even though it was very cheap, I still struggled to pay for school and my apartment, and I was forced to get a second job in order to pay for anything. However, I was determined to make it work, and while it was a hard struggle, I was able to graduate. My grades weren't the best, but I had my business degree, and I was ready to finally start my life for real. Shortly after graduating, I got myself a job at a bank as a teller and was able to quit my 2 part-time jobs. It was such a relief, as it freed up so much time for me. I made enough money even as an entry-level employee that I was able to pay my bills and work less hours. Things were going very well, but then my family showed up at my apartment.
Hey Brad, it's been a long time since we've seen you.
Yeah, for good reason. What are you doing here?
We heard that you are working at the bank.
Yeah? So what?
Well, we thought maybe you could help us out and give us information about the bank.
Why would I do that? Are you trying to case the bank to rob it? Have you guys moved up to being bank robbers too?
Maybe, but we were more just interested in maybe you could share some of your wealth.
Wealth? Seriously, what is wrong with you people? I don't make a lot of money. I only make enough to cover my own bills.
Don't lie to us. Listen, just give us something and we'll leave you alone. But if you don't, then we'll be forced to make you give us something.
Just give it up. I have no interest in associating with you people. Now just leave." I should have known that although they left, that wouldn't be the end of things. The next day when I came home from work, I found the door to my apartment broken open. Once inside, I saw that many of my belongings were missing, and I knew that my family had broken in and robbed me. I was annoyed and terrified that this was only the first time that they would attack me, and so I packed up my belongings and got myself an apartment at a more secure building. Thankfully, I didn't hear from them for some time. Years passed, and I was promoted at the bank a few times, and was on a track to become the bank manager. Things were going really great for me. I even started dating a woman that I met in my new apartment building. We had a lot in common and had many common goals and wishes. But once again, my family reappeared back into my life. Although this time, it was only my sister. She approached me at my job, and I instantly knew why when I saw her belly. "Hey Kendra, listen, if you're here to do business at the bank, that's fine, but I don't want anything to do with you."
Wait! Please. I need your help, Brad.
Help with what exactly?
Well, Mom and Dad got arrested, and without them, I've really been struggling to make ends meet. My baby is due in like 4 months, and I can barely afford to feed myself, let alone a kid.
And what do you want from me? Haven't you people taken enough from me over the years?
Come on, Brad. We're family. Please. I just need a place to stay for a bit and some help paying for the medical bills. I'll pay you back.
I wasn't buying it. It was obvious that she wasn't lying about being pregnant, but even that wasn't enough to make me feel sympathy for her. And so, I asked security to escort her out of the bank and to never allow her back inside. I was curious though, and I called an old friend of mine that lived near my parents, and sure enough, Kendra had been telling the truth about my parents. Their luck finally ran out, and they were arrested and charged with a long list of crimes that pretty much guaranteed that they wouldn't get out of prison for a few decades at least, which left my sister all alone to fend for herself. Part of me felt guilty and wanted to help her, but I knew that if I let her back into my life, that she would only steal from me again. And so I refused to speak with her. After a few months, I got home and found police outside my apartment building. They were escorting my sister, who was incredibly pregnant. Apparently, she had broken into the building and had even broken into my apartment, unaware I had a dog and was attempting to rob me. But then my dog attacked her, and she left my house and started running when the security for the building shot and teased and caught her and detained her until the police showed up. She tried to get them to believe that she had been there with my permission.
There's my brother. Just ask him and he'll confirm that I was allowed to be in that apartment.
Is this true, sir? Did you give her permission to enter your home? Of course, I didn't. This woman is a thief and a liar. She is my sister, but if she broke into my apartment, then I wish to press charges against her.
You can't be serious? We're family?
Yes, and this isn't the first time that you've stolen from me, but it will be the last time, and that's for sure. The officer dragged her away from me and threw her into the back of a police car. Later, I found out that the judge didn't feel any sympathy for her, despite being pregnant. Sure enough, when she was on trial, they charged her with more than just breaking and entering. In the end, she was sentenced to 15 years in the same prison as our parents. In the back of my mind, I knew that one day they would be out of prison and that there was a chance that they might just harass me again. But in the meantime, I knew the one way I could get revenge on them would be to deny them a legacy. Soon after my sister gave birth to her son, I petitioned the court to allow me to adopt the boy. I knew that he was blameless in all of this, and that if I took him in and raised him, the opposite of how my sister was raised, that he would have a chance at turning out to be a good man. Thankfully, the court agreed, and they made me his legal guardian. I never told him about his mother or grandparents, but I was sure to write them letters and rub it in their faces that I was raising him to be just like me, a good and honest person. The angry letters I would get back made it all worth it. And as time went on, we really bonded, and eventually the woman I was seeing became my wife, and we had 2 children, but treated all of them the same. It's been 10 years, and all my children are doing wonderfully and are model citizens, while my parents and sister are rotting in jail. So there you have it. Do you think I should have taken pity on my sister and taken her in when she came begging for help? Or do you think I was justified in sending her away? Some of you might think I'm exaggerating when I say this, but I'd rather take my orphanage back than Aunt Nancy ever again. Sure, the children's home was physically abusive, but Nancy was cruel in both the physical and emotional way. She would try to avoid me as much as possible, even though she was my literal guardian. And whenever she did decide to interact with me, it wasn't pleasant. Hi everybody, I'm Mateo, and I have quite a fun story to tell everybody. This is the story on how I got revenge on my aunt, who treated me absolutely horribly. I still have no regrets about what happened to her. I'll just get right to it now. So I'm from a country in South America. I grew up in a home for kids since my parents had died when I was young. The workers always neglected everyone's basic needs and hit us often. I still have scars from the amount of times they lashed out on me. One day, these missionaries from America visited our region, and a couple that was on the trip came by and wanted to adopt me. So, through a lot of legal procedures, I became a US citizen, and I was flown out of my home country. It was a very hard change for me now, because I was already 9 when my new parents adopted me. I had to learn English, which was difficult and even more embarrassing, since everyone else around me has spoken English for their entire lives. There were also quite the cultural differences which I had to adjust to, and having parents now in general was something I had to quickly get used to. Luckily, my new parents were extremely patient and kind with me, which I was grateful for. We made many memories together, but again, my mom and dad passed away 5 years later. They were killed instantly as a result of a car crash, which absolutely devastated me. I was then sent to live with my Aunt Nancy, who was my dad's sister. Some of you might think I'm exaggerating when I say this, but I'd rather take my orphanage back than Aunt Nancy ever again. Sure, the children's home was physically abusive, but Nancy was cruel in both the physical and emotional way. She would try to avoid me as much as possible, even though she was my literal guardian. And whenever she did decide to interact with me, it wasn't pleasant.
Hey, Matt.
See?
Don't say that stupid word. You're in America. Speak English.
Sorry, Auntie.
God, my brother really made the worst decision when it came to having a kid. He's adopted, not even from this country, ugly and stupid. I was fine with it as long as I didn't have to deal with it, but now my brother has to just die and leave me this thing to look over.
Sorry, Auntie.
Can you shut up and trim the bushes already? I'm tired of your weird accent.
Mom and Dad.
Mom and Dad, my ass. I'm not your mommy, Mateo. You're not even purely part of the family, so I will treat you as such.
Nancy would constantly comment on my accent and basically anything that was identifiable to my culture. She hated my curly hair and would make me cut it short so it was straighter. She also grimaced at my tanned skin tone, and according to her, I shouldn't go outside much since I was brown enough. Also, my aunt would beat me a lot for either no reason or one that doesn't even make any sense. She noticed that I would get scared if she ever held up slippers or a belt and used this to her advantage.
Mateo, do you think the length of this belt is too long?
It's fine.
Oh, don't tell me you're scared of a belt, are you? I'm gonna have so much fun scaring you.
Please don't, Nancy.
Come on, don't be such a wimp.
The fact that Aunt Nancy was making fun of my past trauma was pretty aggravating. I tried hard to let her off the hook with every new thing she did or said, and it was becoming increasingly hard to not yell back at her as the years went on. She even berated me in front of my friends from school.
You've been living here for like 7 years now. Why is your accent still so terrible?
Sorry, I've been practicing a lot.
Well, obviously your Spanish friends you have with you are keeping you from talking normally.
Auntie Nancy, stop saying that.
So are you denying my First Amendment rights now? I can't freely say what I believe?
No, but by this point, I was so done with my aunt. I apologized to my friends, and my head boiled with anger as I thought about all that Nancy had said. One day, Nancy took me to my grandparents' place since she had some sort of salon appointment. I had visited them almost every week with my parents, but ever since living with Nancy, I'd see them only about 6 times a year. Grandpa and Grandma were some of the sweetest people that I'd ever met, and I knew that I could tell them anything. So I began to complain to them about everything that I'd been going through at home with Nancy. I went into tiny details ranging from her racist remarks and distaste towards adoptees to the manual labor she forced me to do. When I was finally done ranting about my situation, Both of my grandparents were fuming in absolute fury.
Mateo, I promise we will help you. We have a lot of secrets we've been keeping, but I think it'll come to our advantage now.
Honey, I assure that Nancy will never lay a finger on you again.
Thank you. My grandparents soon revealed some shocking secrets about their life, and they were right. I really could use a lot of the stuff as weapons against my evil aunt. The next time Nancy started acting incredibly arrogant to me again, I knew it was the perfect time to work out my revenge. Aunt Nancy, is it okay if I go to the park with my friends for one of their birthdays?
I really wish your birthday could come. Then I could just kick you out already, filthy immigrant boy.
Well, I think you're the one that should be kicked out.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't Grandpa and Grandma own this house? I think they have all the right to be able to kick someone like you out.
What in the hell is a stupid kid like you talking about?
Well, you've acted very horribly to me for the past 3 years by insulting my culture, my appearance, and the fact that Mom and Dad had adopted me. And I know now that you don't even own this house because your parents paid for every penny.
That's not true. Stop lying. I'll call them right now.
I watched as Nancy quickly dialed my grandparents' number, and my grandma picked up. Nancy began to yell about how I was a complete liar who was just trying to embarrass and humiliate her in front of everyone I knew.
Mom! Your so-called grandson keeps trying to assault me and claims that you bought my house. Mommy, tell him it's not true. Hurry! Just calm down now. We're almost at your door. Sweetheart, you know it's true. Mom? What? No, I paid for it, Mom.
Stop pretending. We wrote the check for the whole house. Nancy, it's time to also reveal the fact that you're adopted. Go ahead. Tell Mateo that you're adopted.
Dad, how can you just betray me like this?
How do you think it's right that you can just emotionally and physically hurt an adoptee from simply being loved by people other than their biological parents? We've loved you for all of your life. So how would you feel if we treated you so horribly like you have treated Mateo?
I've always been so nice to him. I'm your daughter and he's not. What a hypocrite. If he's not your brother's son, then you're not our daughter. It's time to get out of the house. But Mom, don't make me call the cops on you. We've removed you from our will and Mateo will be receiving all of our inheritance after we pass. This isn't fair. This isn't fair. I'm gonna kill you, Mom.
With that, Nancy lunged at my grandma angrily. She hit the ground, and I quickly was able to pry my aunt off of her and restrain her while Grandpa called the police. The police very quickly showed up and made sure that my grandma was okay from being pushed onto the floor. Luckily, my grandma only ended with a sore hip. On the other hand, Nancy was completely kicked out of the house and also charged with assault and resisting arrest, since she'd kicked the cops multiple times before being tased and forced into the police car. I'm not sure what happened to her, since my grandparents dealt with all of the illegal technicalities, but it's been a few years, and I haven't seen or heard from my aunt. Grandma and Grandpa gifted me Nancy's home, and I was ecstatic at this news. I did rent the house out for a few years when I went to college. I've just come home from university, and my grandparents are still doing very well. They say they have no regrets on what they did since every child deserves to have love, and she just didn't understand that. Thanks for listening. I tried to defend myself by bringing up my hands and arms to block her attacks, but she just kept coming at me until I punched her in the stomach. She was much smaller, and the blow from my fist made her double over in pain. Before I knew what had happened, she ran and told my father that I had attacked her without a reason, and when I tried to plead my case and say that she attacked me first. My father wouldn't believe me. Instead, he just demanded that I leave right away. Hi there, my name is Michael, and I've been placed in a really uncomfortable and terrible situation. It all started when I was 12. My parents were wonderful together. I honestly looked up to them as what a loving and caring couple should be, and I had hoped that someday that I would also be able to find someone that made me feel as special as they made each other feel. Both of them were incredibly romantic and did their best to make the other one feel loved and needed. So when my mother became ill with an incurable disease, my father and I were devastated. She went from being healthy to being on her deathbed within weeks, and there was nothing that we could do about it. The day that she died, my father and I spent a solid 24 hours crying. We only stopped because we passed out from exhaustion. After the funeral, my father and I tried our best to get back into a normal routine, but it was so hard not having my mom around. Things just felt like they were missing something vitally important. The years passed and my father and I healed, although we never truly forgot her. I had honestly thought that my father would have stayed single for the rest of his life, but I would have thought wrong. Not long after my 18th birthday, my father brought home a woman that was nearly half his age. My father had had me when he was only 22, and this woman that he brought home was 24. He introduced her to me as his girlfriend, and that her name was Carrie. It felt awkward that my father was dating someone that was barely older than me, but I didn't really see where it was my place to complain. So long as he was happy, then I would just have to stomach it. Besides, I had thought that Carrie would get tired of dating someone so much older, but I had suspected wrong. Months went by, and they were still dating, and what was worse, my father had invited her to move into our house. The day that she did, she began redecorating the house, and even started removing photos from the walls and furniture, including ones of my mom. Hey, you can't just take those photos down.
Hey, this is my house now too, and I don't want to see photos of your dead mother. I don't need reminders that I wasn't his first wife. After all, I have you here to remind me of that.
How dare you? There is no way that my father will stand for this. Sadly, though, Carrie talked to my father first and had spun the story that I was being rude and that I hated that she was moving in. Sadly, my father believed her, and he asked me to try to be more nice to Carrie since she would now be living with us, and if we wanted a happy home, then we needed to get along. When I tried to bring up the fact that she had taken down the photos of my mother, my father got rather absent-minded and just said that maybe it was time that we did take them down. After all, she would have wanted us to move on with our lives, and no matter whether we had photos of her on the walls or not, we would never forget her. I wanted to believe what he was saying, but it sounded like a very lame excuse. Again, I just wanted him to be happy, plus I was planning to go away to college within a year, and so I resigned myself to just putting up with Carrie for what I thought would be a short amount of time. But then things began to escalate. For starters, Carrie and my father got married, and not long after that, she began to boss me around.
Hey, brat, I need you to wash my car.
What car? You don't own one.
Ha, joke's on you. I got your father to buy me one, and I got it dirty. So go clean it.
No. Why would I do that? I'm not your servant.
You'll do it, or I'll kick your ass.
She then attacked me and began to punch me in the face and stomach. I tried to defend myself by bringing up my hands and arms to block her attacks, but she just kept coming at me until I punched her in the stomach. She was much smaller, and the blow from my fist made her double over in pain. Before I knew what had happened, she ran and told my father that I had attacked her without a reason, and when I tried to plead my case and say that she attacked me first, my father wouldn't believe me. Instead, he just demanded that I leave right away. Even though I knew that I was in the right and that I hadn't done anything wrong, I couldn't persuade him to see the truth. Instead, I had to pack up my things and just leave. It was less than ideal, but it was either that or my father insisted that he would call the police, and that was something that I really didn't want to get involved with. And so I left and used what little money I had saved up working part-time to find myself a place to live. Unfortunately, it was a very small apartment in a very bad neighborhood, but it was all I could afford. It took some time, and I had to take out loans, but I did manage to still go to college. And after 4 years of studying extremely hard and working 3 part-time jobs at the same time, I graduated and was able to find an entry-level job at a prestigious law firm. It didn't pay much better than my part-time jobs, but it was a start, and I was grateful for it. A couple years passed, and I moved up in the firm and started making some pretty good money. So much so that I was able to buy myself a modest house in a much nicer neighborhood and was even able to get myself a car too. And another few years passed and I once again moved up in the company and was able to buy myself a really large house along with a luxury car. I was rather proud of myself, and unfortunately the only thing that could make it better was to know that my father was proud at how far I had come. But it had been many years since we had spoken, and I wasn't sure if he was still upset with me or not. One day, though, I heard a knock on my front door and went to answer it, and was beyond surprised to see Carrie of all people standing there.
Hi, Michael. I know that it's been a long time. Can I come in?
I honestly didn't really want to let her in, of course, but I was hopeful that maybe she had grown over the years, and that maybe she had come to apologize for driving a wedge between my father and I. Okay, I suppose.
So I heard that you had done quite well for yourself, and by the looks of it, you really have.
Yeah, it's taken a long time, but I'm doing well.
That's good. Sorry to ask, but can I use your washroom?
Annoyed, I showed her to my washroom, which was connected to my bedroom. As I showed her the way, she kept admiring my large house and all the things that I had amassed over the years. Once she was in the bathroom, I left her to go back to the living room to wait for her. 20 minutes passed when I finally got impatient and went to check on what was taking so long, and as I entered my bedroom, I found her naked on my bed. What the hell are you doing?
Oh, come on. I know that you've had a thing for me for years, and I'll be honest. Your father isn't really doing it for me anymore, so when I heard that you had become rich, I thought that I would come and pay you a visit. I can do all the things that used to make your father happy.
I was disgusted, and without thinking, I started recording our conversation using my cell phone that was hidden in my pocket. So you would leave my father for me? Just like that?
Well, of course I would. He's old and frail, and you're young and full of life. I'd much rather have a man like you.
Is that so? But why? Isn't my father doing okay for himself?
Well, he doesn't make the kind of money that you do, so I would much rather be with you.
With a big smile on my face, I pulled out my phone and showed her that I had been recording our conversation the entire time. The look of fear that spread across her face once she realized what I had been doing was priceless. Before she could say another word, I sent a copy of the recording to my father. In a flash, she ran past me and out of my house, and hadn't even bothered to get dressed. That night, I slept like a log, knowing that I had finally gotten a little bit of revenge against Carrie, and in the morning, I was greeted by a reply message from my father that read, "Can we talk?" My heart skipped a beat, and I wanted to think that maybe this meant something good, but after what had happened with Carrie the night before, I wasn't so sure that I should get my hopes up. I replied that I would be on my way over. When I arrived, my father met me at the front door and hugged me for a full 10 minutes. Neither of us spoke, and just enjoyed the hug after being apart for so many years. It felt incredible, but only half as good as what my father said next.
Oh, Michael, I was such a fool for believing Carrie. Can you ever find it in your heart to forgive me?
It's going to be hard, but I think with time that I can, yes.
That's more than I deserve, and I understand. I'm really proud at the man that you've become in spite of not having any help from an old fool like me.
Thanks, Dad. You taught me well, and I used the lessons from you to succeed. You know this is all well and good, but what about when Carrie comes home? The second I mentioned her name, my father began laughing hysterically. As it turned out, she had ran out straight to her car and had driven out of my driveway so fast that she hadn't paid attention to traffic and had backed out and into a cop car and then drove off in a panic. The cop pursued her for over 10 minutes until she finally noticed him and pulled over. After the cop looked in the window and saw that she was naked, he arrested her on the spot and she spent the night in jail. Once he had told me the whole story, I asked him how he had found out all of this, and he told me that Carrie had told him. She had used her one phone call to call him and told him everything. So does that mean that you bailed her out?
Of course not. I had suspected that she had been cheating on me for years, but I could never prove it. A part of our prenuptial agreement stated that if either of us cheated, that the other would get nothing in the divorce settlement, and since you sent me proof, well, I can finally divorce her without the fear of her taking all my money in alimony.
And he was right. A few months later, my father successfully divorced Carrie, and the judge honored the prenuptial agreement, and Carrie got nothing. My father got the house, the car, and was able to keep his retirement savings as well, which left Carrie penniless and homeless. In the months and years that followed, my father and I started spending a lot more time together in an attempt to make up for lost time. And I'm happy to say that we are once again very close and talk to each other almost every day. As for Carrie, well, she ended up going to prison for a few years for her little joyride where she evaded the police. After she got out, she really didn't have any good prospects, and as far as I know, she ended up living on the streets. I did feel bad for her, but only just a little. After all, she had stolen the most precious thing in the world from me: time with my father.
No, I don't. And I can't believe I couldn't see the real you until this moment.
I'm sorry, but there is no way I would marry someone like you. Enraged, Michelle turned towards me and tried to kick my guide dog but slipped on her own dress and fell down the short flight of stairs that led up to the altar. So let me start off by saying that my name is Josh, and I haven't always had the easiest life. Thankfully, I was raised by some of the loveliest parents around. They have always been incredibly supportive. Even my brother Abe and I have an amazing relationship. The thing that has made my life challenging, though, was that I was in a terrible accident when I was younger. I was playing in an abandoned building when a canister of chemicals fell on me and damaged my eyes so much that I was left blind for the rest of my life. I have to admit that I found my new life terrifying, and I really didn't know how I could possibly live the rest of my life without my sight. It sent me into a deep depression, and it took me many years before I finally was able to dig my way out of all the self-pity and helplessness that I was feeling. Eventually, I did indeed find a way to live my life, and even found a way to actually be able to live my life to the fullest. To start with, I had to find something that I could do for a living, and Abe suggested that I start up a vlog. At first, it sounded silly, but I eventually came around to the idea and started one, and it has made all the difference in the world. I had never thought that people would want to watch me live my life, but that I could also make a career out of it. I use several apps to make it possible for me to interact with my audience. Apps that read out comments to me, as well as convert my speech to text for when I want to comment back. Plus, my parents and Abe all help me when I can't use such apps. You would be surprised how user-friendly technology has become to people like myself. As you might imagine, meeting people became quite difficult as well, but the more comfortable that I became with my disability, the more independent that I became. However, Abe didn't have that excuse. Abe was always a very charming and attractive man, but had bad luck when it came to picking women. He had a bad habit of dating women that were pretty but were awful people. He was such a good person and just couldn't see anything negative in other people. So when he called me up and told me that he had started dating someone, I was a bit skeptical. Hey bro, how's life? Pretty good. How about yourself? Great, actually. I met an amazing woman that I know that you and our parents will love. Oh yeah, that's great. When do we get to meet her? Tonight, actually. Considering his past relationships, I wasn't expecting much, but I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. As I was dropped off by a cab, I was finishing up a live stream from the day. I had taken my seeing eye dog to the park and was telling people all about the program where I got her. It was important to me to bring awareness to the wonderful program that I got her from. As I was nearing the end of the stream, I got into a cab that would take me to my parents' house. The driver informed me that he had pulled up in front of the sidewalk that led to the front porch, and I paid him and stepped out. As I was leaving the car, I placed my walking stick down and started walking the front door, when my dog indicated that there was someone standing a few feet in front of me and that I should stop moving. I could hear her turn around and sigh heavily.
Oh, whoa there. Can't you see where you're going? You almost hit me with that stick of yours.
Unless my dog isn't doing her job right, I should be several feet away from you.
Oh, you're blind. That explains why you were heading to the wrong house.
I had a bad feeling in my stomach. Something told me that this woman was Abe's new girlfriend, and we were already off to a bad start. I quickly told my audience that I would be ending the stream for the day and turned off my phone.
Oh my god. Not only are you blind, but you're one of those so-called influencers too? Did you just say goodbye to the 3 people that follow you? It's no wonder that someone as poor as you would be trying to get sympathy from people in such a rich neighborhood as this.
I actually have over 2 million followers, and there were over 200 in that stream. But listen, I think we got off on the wrong foot.
Honestly, I don't care. You can just leave now, because when my boyfriend arrives, he's gonna kick your butt. So you better just move on. He's wealthy and belongs here, unlike you.
Just then, I heard Abe approaching. I knew it was him by the scent of his cologne. He always wore too much, and it was always the same brand. Hey bro, looks like you already met the love of my life. Michelle, let me formally introduce you to my brother Josh. Josh, this is Michelle. Yes, we met. Maybe we should just head inside and introduce her to our folks. Although I can't see, I'm pretty observant about the world, and I could feel the shift in the mood. Michelle had been taken by surprise, and Abe was oblivious to the tension that she had created. The silence spoke volumes. After a few awkward seconds, we went into the house. Our parents greeted us there, and things went fairly smoothly until dinner. I went to sit in my usual spot and found that my chair had been moved. As a blind person, having things in consistent locations makes my life a great deal easier. I had thought that my mother was in the room, but it turned out to be Michelle. "Hey, Mom, can you help me find my seat? I didn't realize that you had rearranged things for our guest."
Oh, am I in your spot? I wanted to sit next to Abe. I didn't know there was assigned seating.
Of course that's okay. I just need to know when things change so that I can adjust accordingly.
I'll try to keep that in mind. It must be nice for you to come over, eat good food every so often.
I'm actually a good cook.
Well, no, I meant that. It must be nice to visit. People are well off like your parents and Abe. Being poor makes it hard to eat healthy and good food.
Things were not getting any better, and I could sense that Michelle was less than impressed with me. Plus, I was very confused why she was convinced that I was poor and that Abe was wealthy. While Abe wasn't remotely poor, he barely made half of what I did with my vlog. It didn't matter though, so long as Abe was happy.
Does your dog have to be in here with us? I don't want dog hair in my food.
It's my seeing eye dog, so yes. I'm sorry if her presence bothers you, but I need her with me. After that, Abe and our parents joined us in the dining room, and we all sat down and ate our meals. I chose to stay silent about Michelle's behavior, as I just assumed that maybe it was her being nervous. But as the months ticked by, she continued to be very rude to me. It hurt me to continue to stay silent, but Abe was so happy, and I didn't want to do or say anything that might jeopardize his happiness. But then he announced that he had proposed to Michelle, and my heart sank. This awful person was now going to be a member of our family permanently. The day before the wedding, we all gathered at the church for the rehearsal, and Abe had asked me to be his best man, and of course I had accepted. However, Michelle had made an incredible fuss over it, so much so that I thought for certain that Abe would finally see her for the terrible person that she was.
Well, yeah, it's okay if Josh is your best man, but does he have to bring his dog down the aisle with him? Couldn't we just have the maid of honor show him the way?
Yes, but his dog is important. Without his dog, he has no way of navigating through the world. And if the maid of honor ever has to do something, he will be left without any guidance at all.
Except I don't want that animal in any of our wedding photos. It's bad enough that he'll be wearing sunglasses the whole time.
I could tell that Abe was bothered by this, and I did appreciate him sticking up for me. In the end, Michelle relented and allowed me to have my guide dog, although I didn't trust her, and sure enough the next day, I found out that I was right not to. As the ceremony began, I couldn't find my guide dog, no matter how much I called for her. However, the ceremony had to begin, and so I allowed the maid of honor to escort me. It was so jarring and worrying to stand up at the altar without my guide dog. I felt truly blind in that moment, and tried to hide my panic as best as I could. Abe squeezed my hand and held it in support of me. Suddenly though, my mother came up to me and handed me the leash to my dog. "Oh, thank you, Mom. Where was she? Is she okay?" I could tell by the tone in her voice that something was upsetting her. She did not sound happy at all.
We found her locked in a closet in Michelle's changing room.
But how did she get there?
Oh, I think we both know how.
She was right. There was no other way around it. Michelle had locked my guide dog in her changing room so that she couldn't be a part of the wedding. This was a step too far, and I wanted to say something, but I waited until just the right moment. The ceremony began, and Michelle came down the aisle to meet us at the front of the church. The priest then began to speak, and when he said that famous line, I jumped in and spoke my piece. "Should anyone present no of any reason that this couple should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now, or forever hold your peace." I object. This woman is an absolute monster, and a gold digger as well. "Josh? What are you talking about?"
Oh, will you just shut up, you horrible cripple? You're ruining my wedding.
"No, Michelle! You ruined your own wedding by being a monster." "Abe, Michelle has had issues with me since we first met. My guide dog was found in her dressing room, locked in her closet. She purposefully tried to keep her away, despite the fact that I need her with me at all times." "Michelle, is this true?"
Well, I mean, you can't prove that it was me that put her in there.
Plus, she is only marrying you because she thinks you're rich.
What do you mean? He is rich, unlike you.
No, I'm not. I mean, I do okay for myself, but compared to Josh and my parents, I'm not rich at all.
Wait a minute. What are you saying? Are you saying that you don't have as much money as this blind idiot?
No, I don't. And I can't believe I couldn't see the real you until this moment. I'm sorry, but there is no way I would marry someone like you. Enraged, Michelle turned towards me and tried to kick my guide dog but slipped on her own dress and fell down the short flight of stairs that led up to the altar. I could hear her hit the bottom of the steps hard before she screamed in frustration and then ran out of the church. I counted my blessings that she hadn't successfully kicked my guide dog and that she had made a massive fool out of herself in the process. I felt so bad that I had ruined his wedding, but Abe assured me that I had done him a massive favor. As it turned out, Michelle was drowning in debt and had seen Abe as a way to escape that debt because she thought that he was rich and would pay for her to be debt-free and to have a lavish lifestyle. Had he married her, he would have been ruined financially. It was true that he made good money, but she owed more money than he could ever afford to pay off, and the minimum payments alone would have drained his bank account within a few months. Abe was so grateful that I had rescued him, but I felt angry at knowing that had things hadn't happened the way that they did, that he would have been completely ruined, and so I chose to do something that I normally wouldn't. Thankfully, Abe and Michelle had hired a videographer for the ceremony, and they had filmed the whole interaction. I managed to get a copy of the video, and I posted it to all of my social media accounts and put her on blast. The backlash against her was intense, but more than warranted. I begged my followers to not attack her, but to also not give her a chance to hurt anyone else. That anyone getting involved with her should know what kind of person that she actually was. As a result, I heard that she ended up losing her job as they saw the video and didn't want anything to do with someone that would attack a guide dog. I'm not sure what became of her, but the last I heard of her, she moved to another city and had even changed names. Honestly, she was just lucky that her kick missed though, as I would have pressed charges against her and ensured that she went to prison. Thankfully though, there is a happy ending to this story. Abe did eventually find someone that not only was a genuinely good person, but was a perfect fit for our family. In fact, she was the woman that had trained my guide dog. They truly do make the perfect couple, and knowing how happy they make each other has even made me wonder if I should begin trying to find someone to spend my life with as well. Perhaps I will. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.